What's up, people of the world? It's Carpo here. Chillin'. I guess I could start out by the inspiration for this video, which was a picture that my son drew the other day. What do you see when you look at that? Yeah, it's a nautilus shell, and it just, I don't know, it just came out of nowhere. And he just drew a shell, and I started thinking about phi, or the golden mean, and the 1.618, or the proportion that is supposedly seen in all these different things in nature. So before I did the video, I just did a quick look into the proportions of the nautilus shell again, and found out that actually it's not 1.618. In fact, many nautilus shells that have been measured, one guy said they had an average of 1.33. And so what the article was talking about was how we want to find solutions and answers in things, and we want to believe that nature has encoded this, the Fibonacci sequence in all these things in nature, and it has. They find it down on to the atomic level. That they tend to. I guess they said on the atomic level, certain magnetic atoms resonate at frequencies which show that frequencies proportional to phi, whatever that means. But basically that it is a pattern that's repeated over and over in nature. But the question comes, is it really found in the human face? Is it really found in the hand and the body? And there are certain proportions in the human body. It's very difficult, because when you're looking for a number to fit something, I mean, those who have looked into numbers know you can always find that answer if you're really looking. You'll always keep working until you make it fit. The proportions were done from the navel on the body, phi, so that could be true, or maybe not. We take measurements from different points, but finding out that the nautilus shell actually had a different, ratio, I guess there's a few different ways to look at it. I'm not saying that it's not phi, I'm saying that it's a different proportion to the way that they show it in the pictures, that the way people perceive it. And I know a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? What's phi? And that's something that I can't really explain here. But those who know what I'm talking about, it's an interesting thing that we find it everywhere in nature, and that we look for it. And anyway, so in the places that we do find it, we tend to kind of try to push it off onto other things that may not fit the magic number. And this magic number is important because it shows a consistency in nature, which means it shows a universal program that's consistent from the macro and the micro world. And so that led me to think about people today, and how how much information that we have, and how it must have been so much easier for our ancestors to say 1,000 years ago, to latch onto a particular way of thinking and know that those around them would reinforce that. Whether or not they were right or wrong doesn't matter, because the people wanted to live comfortably. What all belief systems and religions and numerology and all this comes down to is trying to live a better life, and trying to live the way that nature intended us to. And we all have different views on what that is. I don't myself, I can't sit here and say, well, this is the right way to live, because my mind changes, my perceptions change. And if you'd asked me 20 years ago, what do you think about, can we ever have world peace, or certain questions like that, my opinions have changed over the decades as I see how people really are. People have some very innermost turmoil and angst that tends to come out against others, and it's usually disguised as, well, it's projection or deflection, and it's because people's ideas are so different, and we're so, I guess you could look at it kind of like segregation. You know, racial segregation, when it's forced, is a bad thing. Racial segregation, when it's by option, can be a good thing. It doesn't mean that blacks and whites can't get along or intermingle. Let's just say in certain communities, blacks tend to want to live with blacks, whites tend to want to live with whites. It's totally different than say racism, you know. But on the same token, it kind of is racism. But when I'm using that as a metaphor to compare to the way that we view I guess the way that we view our belief systems in general, because we can't live in communities where we believe this Bible and they believe that Bible over in the next county, because we're all bouncing off of each other. It's the internet that's brought all this to light, and you start to see how people can't handle any type of information that counters what they may have already decided is true. The old saying comes to mind, don't bother me with the truth, I've already made up my mind. It's very common, and it's because it's hardwired in humans to seek answers. And it's also hardwired in humans to find patterns in nature. And it's also hardwired in humans to find something that makes us feel comfortable and stick with it. And this can be very beneficial for the individual to lead a happy life, you know, to lead a life feeling like they have something to give, that they have something to share, that they're part of a community or a group, whatever it may be for the individual. But in the long run, it's damaging, because any group that holds themselves as esteemed higher than others, any group that separates themselves from the whole, is doing no justice for society at large. It's doing only justice for the small group or the large group that's involved in it, whether it be religion, politics, whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I am not an anti-religion person, even though I am anti-church. There's a huge difference. I think that religion has been abused, but for a person to believe something, so long as it harms no one, I don't think that we're ever going to get over the fact that people are going to believe different things, and that we may not agree, and that's fine. But that's why we all need to discuss things more rationally, is because we see something that we don't agree with and we attack it instantly rather than considering it. Most ideas in the past have been ridiculed and then ignored, or ignored then ridiculed, and there's a certain process that happens to where they're finally accepted. And there's no way we're going to get people to accept all the things that are coming to light right now. There's so much information. There's so much science going on in the world. So many new discoveries every day that some of the biggest ones are, completely obscured by the mundane, boring news stories of the day, I don't watch the news. If I want to get information, I go to, let's say, a scientific journal online and say, what's the biggest, greatest, latest news on this, Or sometimes I look at, genetics and nano technology to see what's the latest in this. You have to go to each subject individually, and what happens is that we're all given these sound bites of nonsense from the media, the news, telling us what's important, and then we have this conflict of interest out in society. Because we have a bunch of people saying, oh, did you hear about this or that? And, I guess, for me, I guess this an example that maybe isn't the best example. I was over at my neighbor's the other day, and he asked me if, he's like, oh, that ALS Ice Bucket Challenge? And I was like, no, I don't. He just seemed surprised, and he had this, ice bucket, he'd just done it or whatever. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Actually, the only thing I heard about that was somebody said something about Mark Zuckerberg, not donating to the ALS Foundation or something. But I purposefully keep away from these stories because I think it's just, you know, this particular situation, I guess I looked into it. It was, I believe, raising money for Lou Gehrig's disease. And I believe they exceeded like $4 million, which was better than their 1.25 the year before, and that's great, you know. So there's nothing wrong with the idea of us having little, what do you call them? There's words for them. I try to avoid the, you know, whatever. I guess the online it would be, you know, viral videos, but there's like viral ideas and can't remember the word I'm looking for, but for the average person to do it and film it and put it online, that's great. What's the point? I mean, if you're not donating anything, I think it's kind of a... The reason why I use that as an example is because it's like, it's something that we want to make an impact in our world. We want to make a difference in society and to help and to do the best we can. And sometimes something comes along where we think, well, if I just do this, it's enough. I've put in my time, you know. Help a old lady across the street, and I'm good for the week kind of thing. And it doesn't bother me so much. It's just, I think it's kind of, you know, an excuse. Sometimes people do things out of obligation or, well, I'm going to do my good duty. It's hard, you know, in a world where we're all struggling to, you know, try to, I guess, I'm as guilty as the next guy, don't get me wrong. And so I think that people are just people. I guess that's all. Don't know what else to say about it. I like people. I do. But it's interesting watching the way that we all get along and try to make everything work in this world. So anyway, I'll have to come back when I've got more on this because I'm fading. I'm getting distracted by my mental chatter. Take care.